Welcome to We're Not Wizards. We are the best, but not wizards. Enjoy the show!
In one of our stories somewhere.
I mean, you guys can't spell. I mean, let's get.
But we can't spell consistently.
You can't spell consistently either. You can't even say aluminium. You know.
What is that?
we
You can't even spell aluminium. It's literally
we choose not
it's
to.
like, you know, aluminium is spelled aluminium. There's no other way to spell aluminium. It's you know, ALUMINIUM. It's aluminium. You go, oh, that's aluminum, and it's not. There's no way.
But
there's no way even accidentally.
There are too many syllables there.
I can't help it if you guys can't be bothered. Can't be bothered to look at a word.
I think it's an evolution though, because thinking about the English language broadly, there are things that we agree upon, like thought, might, you know, things like that are obviously ridiculous, right? The GHT, that doesn't have to be there. Just T.
I'm going to see. I'm not going to claim this as mine, but I did see somebody once said that you got to remember that the English language is literally like 4 other languages, kind of running about in a trench coat, basically. Because somebody went through this, and they'd like, here's bough. This is how you spell bough of a tree. So this is bough, O-U-G-H. However, this is tow. But it's not. It's actually pronounced tough, you know. And this is dough, and it's not pronounced duff. It's also and this is plough, and this is through, and this is like the various bits of ridiculousness that kind of came up. Welcome to We're Not Entomology.
There we go.
I don't know. Is that the study? I don't know if that's right or if that's the study of insects. I'm pretty sure there's a joke about that where somebody goes, you know, you got your cucarachas wrong again. Yeah, hi. My name's Richard.
Hello.
Welcome to this show of absolute kind of chaos. It's too warm outside today, which means it's typically about... it's about, 11 degrees outside. I don't know what that is in foreign. In America, because you guys insist in using Fahrenheit.
I don't use foreign either. Weirdos use that temperature
No,
scale.
it's not. Boiling an egg, 100 degrees. You know what I mean? Boiling an egg in America is something stupid like 137 or something. It's ridiculous.
This is my temperature gauge.
So the cynic, I've got 2 people joining with me. I've got the rather fantastically cynical. I've got Bernie Lynn, and I've got a man.
Hello.
I've got a man who was brought up on the BBC. So we're expecting him to go full Dick Van Dyke with his accent.
Wow.
I'm expecting it's Brendan Kendrick. What? Yeah. I bet you get people mucking up your name all the time, and then he says, "No, it's just you. You're the first person that's ever messed up my name."
I get Brandon.
Brandon.
That's the instead of Brendan.
Brandon.
Yeah.
What you doing today, Brandon? Yeah. Brendan's slightly different.
That's about. Yeah.
That's about as far as it goes. It's chaotic. It's mad. It's crazy. It's almost like we're trying to herd cats. It's almost like we're trying to herd pets. We need some kind of computer assistance here because we need to get ourselves all cyber petted up. We need to go on a quest. And it's like a cat in a box. It's Schrodinger's cat, and I'm wondering if this ties in kind of directly, because you know what they say about Schrodinger's cat is that it's about putting a cat in a box, and you don't know at any one time whether the cat is dead or whether the cat is alive until you open up the box and get a surprise. So if I'm going to be talking in a cat-like fashion about cyber pets, and I probably want to speak to these 2 people I've got on the show just now from Dead Alive Games, because that's the only way you're going to know if something's dead or something is alive. So, as I say,
we won't even spoil it for you. We'll let you discover.
It's not a hypothetical philosophical kind of question, isn't it? I don't think it's like a solvable one. I think it's just like a statement, Mr. Kendrick.
Yeah.
That's what I reckon it is.
It's quantum.
It's all about just open the box.
Open
Surprise.
the box. Surprise.
Like, surprise.
Speaking of surprise, campaign's going quite well, isn't it? Your Kickstarter for Cyber Quick Kick.
Yes.
I will learn to talk.
Yes.
Do you know what it is? Do you know how when you have a couple of drinks and you think you can drive, and then it turns out you can't? So this is the same with the podcasting. I've had too much of this delicious fruit juice, which has no alcohol in it whatsoever. But I think it's like one of those E-number colouring things. It's just started to add on my brain. And anyway, I'm just going to ask you to stop creating board game titles that I obviously can't pronounce properly. If you in future, when you're going to create
we'll
a
run
board
our
game,
next one by
if you don't mind, if you just end up calling it cards, I don't know, something like that.
Actually, we should have you try to pronounce our first game.
Right, okay, let's challenge accepted.
The one before Lunar Rush.
Is that Omicron Protocol?
Oh, yes. You got it
done.
An
right.
intra-apocalyptic squad-based miniatures board game?
Yep.
Is that the one that you're talking about, Bernie?
Yes. We still have many people who call it Omnicron Protocol.
Well, do you know what that is? Is that not down to maybe a Transformers type thing? Because you had Unicron, and maybe people look at that and go, "That's Omnicron." That's what that is.
But it's kind of like aluminum. Like some people just add an extra syllable, like aluminium. Omnicron Protocol.
It's called the
Nice.
Aluminichronicron. The kind of like, I can't help it, guys, if your education system has let you down and you can't pronounce kind of the names of base metals. I mean, this is how it's going. Look, right, the main thing to point out, right, is you's asked to come on the show. So if this descends into some kind of almighty chaos, then I'd like to point out it's definitely, no, it's not. Do you know whose fault it is? William Brown.
Mm-hmm.
There's a song about him.
I'd like to hear that.
I'm not going to sing it.
Yeah, come on.
It is, but it goes along to, was it the Animals, isn't it? Is it the Animals or someone else? The one that goes, William Brown, texture like sun. You know. I'm not going to go in it. You know.
Yeah, I think we need to keep hearing.
No,
Yeah.
don't.
Send us that clip, please.
No. No. There's a tip.
Yeah, we can do that one offline.
No, because then what will happen is you'll record it and you'll kind of release it. Anyway.
It'll be an add-on to our
I'll make it a
Kickstarter.
stretch goal. Come and listen to some obviously confused and overheated Scotsman kind of murder a song about somebody that nobody knows who he is. Unless, of course, you're into the Hungry Gamer, then you know exactly who William Brown is and the kind of the devastation that he brings to the board game community. The vitriol and just the entire kind of just, I don't know. I mean, let's face it, here's a man that just, he gets prototype copies to kind of talk about, and then halfway through when he does his spiel, he ends up taking a big bite out of it before he sends it on. So the next previewer, right, gets the game and they can't play it because first of all it's covered in his saliva, and second of all he's eaten half the components as well. So I mean, all I'm saying is, William Brown, if you're listening, and we know you listen, that's why we're talking about you, is we got your number, mate. Let's dive back, because the thing that I love about interviewing more than one person at once is I can ask a question and we just wait and see who's the bravest to answer first. Because
It'll just be silence.
Even if a point he'd say, do you know what I mean? And what's your favourite sauce when you make pasta? We'll just see who kind of answers.
That's a hard question.
It's not a hard question.
I can't even pronounce mine.
What, pasta?
I can't pronounce
Oh,
it.
that one.
What's that?
It's this sauce, yeah, but it's a long Italian name. We ate at a place in Philadelphia when we were at PAX Unplugged, and I tried this sauce there, and I was still obsessed about it 6 months later, miles and miles away from Philadelphia, that I had to try and look it up and cook it. And I never found an English recipe. I just followed an Italian guy talking on YouTube and made a something in proximity to it. But boy, it's good.
What's the main ingredient? I mean, we can talk about the board game.
I
later.
would say onions, to be honest. Onions.
Sweet onions. Purple onions or...
Yeah, sweet yellow onions.
Wow.
And you just blend them up. You cook them a little bit and blend them up to be just like paste. Mm-hmm. And then you cook that down and you cook beef in it.
Wow.
And it just reduces forever and ever and ever. It's got, it's similar to like French onion soup in some way.
Right, okay.
It's got that sort of rich...
Like a bouillabaisse kind of thing.
So good.
What?
So good. I'll try to find a... I'm not going to try and pronounce it.
What
I'll try and find letters for you to read.
I bet you it's called aluminium stew. I bet you that's why you can't pronounce it. Bernie, you're a more educated man. You realise that pasta question was just not real.
What question?
Exactly.
Sorry, that's a trigger for me. I love this pasta sauce.
It's just pasta sauce crazy. In fact, if I
just has the pasta sauce. Who needs the pasta?
If I wasn't designing board games, you'd probably find me in the kind of the sauce aisle of my local 7-Eleven with several broken jars around me, just covering myself in ragu. Yeah. And tomato sauce.
Been to jail many times.
You've not been to jail. Yes, you have. I've seen it. You're on one of those America Most Wanted things, and it's just a picture of you with a mugshot with like chopped garlic on this side, and then just tomato puree kind of on the other side. Oh my God,
he's killed somebody. No, it's tomato sauce.
He's just looking for some tagliatelle that he can call his own. Anyway, Bernie, because you seem the more sensible of this bunch.
That's a huge assumption.
It's an assumption that I'm willing to make and then be proved wrong kind of later on. In terms of your board game, so there's two sides to this, right? There's your board game journeys separately, and then your board game journeys together. Now, and I say this and I kind of stereotype people into certain boxes and places, and I always think that when you get people working together, I think that you get one person that's usually a bit more artistically driven and the other person's more kind of mechanically driven. So between the two of you, do you have a balance kind of between that, and who's the person that comes up with the mechanical ideas between the two of you, and who's the kind of person that comes up with the artistic vision between the two of you? Would you say, Barney?
That's a good question. It's a little bit of a mix, but I would say original ideas is probably Brendan.
Right.
Like, if there's something like, hey, let's make a game about, like, people rolling dice and hacking this thing down or something.
Yeah.
Like, he would come up with the cool ideas. And then I would probably say balancing and mechanic stuff, I'm probably a little more strong, but he's also very, like, into that. So, I generally handle more of the art direction with the artists.
Oh, right, okay.
But he's much better at the component design aspects of the graphic design art, which I'm like, I don't know, border looks fine, or what color should you choose? But if it's like the art of the cat or something, I kind of have my own, like, oh, I want it to look like this.
What's your kind of your background? What did you go to further education? Did you major in something?
My background's electrical engineering, so
absolutely completely connected to board games. I memean, when I looked at you and I thought, look, there's a guy who's a bit of an electrical engineer if I ever saw one. But is that the path that you started in? Did you specialize in kind of like, did you start off at school kind of being interested in kind of physics and chemistry and the sciences type of thing, and then went on and went, well, I need to go and decide what I'm going to major at college, and electronic engineering seems like, it kind of fits in with what I'd like to do.
That was pretty much the case, because it was like, what can I do? Because I do like sciences and stuff, and ultimately it kind of ended up being what makes the most money. And I didn't want to be a doctor or a lawyer, so
that's
engineering satisfies the family.
And what is it you do now for a job? Are you a full-time, are you one of these people that went to college and then went and actually did what you studied at college? Because there's a lot of us that don't,
Yeah, I did it for a while, and then I went back again to get my business degree kind of go into gaming. So I did video games for a while.
Oh, right, okay, cool.
Yeah.
What were you doing at video games then?
At that point, mobile and Facebook games, so Zynga and a few other smaller companies that made mobile games.
Cool. And then, and are you out of that side of the business altogether? You're back into
Yeah. So currently, I'm just working full time on Dead Alive, but before that, I was kind of more in small startups, product manager.
Oh, cool. Okay. So there is obviously there's a bit of organisation there, as well as the kind of the overall kind of artistic vision. What about yourself, Mr. Kendrick? Where?
Boy, I've had I don't know. I've had a wild life, upbringing and all that. So in my early, I started working pretty young. So I was about 16 or 17 when I got my second job in a restaurant as a janitor. But worked my way from there to cooking, and then I was a cook in fancy restaurants for several years, and then eventually I just kind of started wandering around. I don't know. I got a job I knew I didn't want to be a chef, cook, kind of as a career. So yeah, I just started to kind of do other stuff. I worked in a coffee shop. I played a lot of pool. I worked in a pool hall as a bartender for a while. All sorts of stuff. And then at some point just kind of came around to software, oddly enough. And I got a really crazy opportunity to
cooking software
as a developer. Yeah. And I got really into it and got hired in as a software developer from a tech support position. And then, the rest is history. I've been teaching software development now for 3 years.
Wow. Okay.
It's coming up on 3 years. Yeah.
Okay. Because that's a structure.
In a boot camp.
It's a structure thing, isn't it? I mean, the thing about software engineering, software development is that there's no artistic leeway in it. Unless you're completely developing a new kind of type of code. It's like if you want to make 3 lines appear on the screen in a certain function, that's you put this code in, and until somebody comes along and says, well, if you get it to call against this stored procedure, it can then do this on the side and can do this on the side and do this on the side instead.
Definitely.
But generally, it's kind of like was the software design, software development was what kind of attracted you to that? Was it the kind of the more of the stability?
It was pure interest in software development and computers. I just was obsessed with it, basically. So, yeah, I don't know. It was a compulsion, straight and pure and simple. I had no eye on the money at all. I still probably don't enough. So I've just been lucky. Yeah. I
don't. Yeah. I find people that talk about lucky is when you go into the. I mean, there's lucky, which is I went into like a petrol station and bought myself a scratch card and won $150,000. But I generally find the reason that people that go that they're lucky is that you hear that they were lucky that one time, but the reason they were lucky is they put certain things into place that meant they were in the right place at the right time to be perceived as kind of, oh, you're so lucky that you got to this job. Well, you didn't see me work for 2.5 years kind of cleaning pool halls, kind of like, you didn't see me having to do a 14-hour shift when somebody didn't turn up at the restaurant. You know what I mean? And then you haven't seen
not wrong.
you haven't seen the 15,000 lines of code that I absolutely messed up and got wrong. And also, if you're imparting the knowledge, there's a certain skill to that, to being able to, with the greatest will in the world, you get experts, and you sit down with an expert and you ask them to explain their field, and they're bad at it. They can't.
Yeah.
That's why they're experts, because you kind of need them in that job. I always find people that, and educators, people that are able to take knowledge, regardless of what they're doing, regardless if it's programming, regardless if it's artwork, regardless if it's makeup tutorials. Join me on Twitch every Thursday.
Yeah. Show how to use a compact.
Just remember it's straight strokes. But imparting that knowledge onto other people and having them understand it. You must be in the situation where you get people who move from being kind of consciously incompetent to that point where the light bulb goes and they're typing away and they say, oh, but if I do X, Y, this, and they correct their own mistake, and you're just like, yeah, this is what you do. You must see these light bulbs
real I live for
all the time. Yeah.
I love seeing that. Yeah.
So,
but it's hand in glove with the game development, I think, in a way. It's very interesting. So in like writing curriculum and teaching people, it's a force multiplier for teaching games and writing rule books, and vice versa. So I don't know that I could have gotten the job and done the job if I hadn't had some experience in teaching and demoing our game so many times. And then once I started teaching, I just got way better at the former. So it's definitely a good relationship there.
So how did you two kind of meet? Was it a game club? Did you first, did you see each other across a cardboard kind of table? Was there meeples? Was there stars? Did you get that?
There were stars.
Yeah.
There were stars.
Yeah. And stars and wars.
Yeah.
It was X-Wing.
Oh, wow.
So I was playing X-Wing at a store in San Francisco pretty frequently. And there was a little local tournament there. And Bernie showed up with a few printouts of ideas, like, okay, these are some lists, like, which is, and I was like, well, I think that this is the least terrible, the least terrible thing you could do today in this tournament. And and Bernie crushed it. He got third place his very first tournament with a pretty bad list. So it's pretty impressive.
Is it like the Princess Leia line, which is like, you flew here in that piece of junk? It's like you're kind of braver. You're kind of braver than I thought. Except, so basically, in this scenario, Bernie was Han Solo, and I'm afraid to say it, you're Princess Leia.
Yeah, I have no shame.
or Chewbacca.
Yeah. No shame whatsoever.
So then, was it a case that Bernie was turning up on a regular basis, and you started to play kind of X-Wing together?
Oh yeah,
pretty much. And quickly we just exchanged numbers and decided to practice, because it's a game with a lot of depth and a lot of high intensity decision making. And so we were like, well, let's just practice. Let's get together. So we started hanging out quite a bit.
What did you think? What were your because for a while X-Wing was like going, yeah, we're flying high, and then all of a sudden Fantasy Flight went, we don't like you anymore. You can go and hang out with those people over there, and it went to a different company. So at that point, I know a ton of people just went, right, well, I'm away.
All that predates us anyway. It was still Fantasy Flight when we were playing, and then I just kind of got burnt out on it. Bernie stuck around for a while, but he was play testing, and well, I don't want to speak too loudly, I guess, but
okay. Yeah, I mean,
things were not going that well.
Yeah, a group of us were doing that, and we kind of just didn't like the direction, and all stopped playing.
Yeah, it's a shame, because it's another one of these. It's always my wonder if, and I was been speaking this quite recently when I was talking with Luke, if Fantasy Flight had held on to the Warhammer kind of license, and obviously Warhammer's now kind of doing gangbusters, flying high, doing amazing, what direction Fantasy Flight... They've dropped so many things, like, Destiny, Star Wars Destiny. Why did you do that?
Yeah.
Was it the cost of the dice? We'll never know. Netrunner, again. And it's really funny is that
so good.
somebody's gone ahead. There's another company that kind of has taken up Netrunner and is still producing Netrunner, which makes you wonder, was it just a production? Were you not making enough money? Was that the kind of the decision on this? But speaking on that, how long was it before you stopped kind of like playing games and then sat down and went, I don't know about you, but maybe we should think about making a game? How long ago? How far were you?
Yeah, that conversation never happened. I
Yeah.
just cruelly tricked him one day. I surprised him with a phone call. It was like, oh my God, I have this idea. Let's try it. And Bernie was like, okay. And then, that was 6 years ago, and he's regretted it.
I think I was on Vicodin or something. I just had foot surgery, so
Yeah,
I said yes, and I was like, oh, shit.
It's like, he comes in and goes, would you like to make up a game? And Bernie's like, I think I've grown an extra foot.
Yeah.
These drugs are great. I don't know
Are
what's
you
happening.
real?
Are you? I mean, why are you floating above the
really?
bed? Why are your ears green? And that kind of thing. Would you like to make a game? Yeah, sure. But why are your ears green? And then next thing you know, you're getting a text saying, "Come in
then
my
I put
house."
a pen in his hand, and I had him
Yeah.
sign a thing, and then So,
And then we're here now.
yeah, and here we are. Yeah.
3 years later. So was the first kind of design, the first kind of designing, was that aluminium protocol? Was that the first kind of
Alumonocron.
aluminium cron?
Omniminium protocol.
Yes. Yeah.
Omniminium.
Yeah, that's where we started.
Minimum.
The big idea was a third party in a skirmish game. We thought that
A British
was an original
one.
idea.
British. Britain isn't a thing.
So we
Britain's not a
we
thing.
started with Guild Ball and then threw a bunch of zombies in,
All right, okay.
and just to see if would this work? How could this work?
Mm-hmm.
And we liked it, so we kept working on it. Oh,
Yeah,
just for so long.
I know. That was kind of like still relatively before like Kickstarter exploded even more as it is now. So we were just like, oh, well, once in a while these like miniature games come out and they do pretty well, so it should be pretty easy.
And that was the thing behind it. You just kind of like put it together and put it out there. And was that the first one that you went to kind of Kickstarter for then? Was it Omicron?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Took
And
us,
we did
took us two
cancel. We were
tries.
humbled. Yeah,
Yep.
our first attempt was humbling, but it was a good reality check of like, okay. And then I forget, it was 6 months later, basically, that we had our shit together and actually put it up and funded. So
Yeah, but that was back in the day. I mean, that was back in the day where you could kind of like, Kickstarter was still very much kind of like an ideas pool where people would put an idea up there and see if it funded, and then if it didn't manage to fund, they go back to the drawing board and go, oh well, maybe we should look at doing this, or maybe we should look at doing that instead, or they release it kind of like 6 months later and then it like funds successfully. I mean, it's not like now where it seems to be, it's very much a kind of like, you have to have your marketing, you have to have kind of like your preamble, you have to have your kind of like your previews.
it's got to
in
be
place.
polished. Yeah.
It's got to be kind of, it's almost like you're kind of like marketing a finished game as opposed to kind of like presenting
Pre-order,
like
pretty much.
Yeah, which is a bit of a shame. I have talked about this like an old man sitting at a bus stop shouting at a cloud so many times I can't even talk about it. But so spurned on from, okay, so looking back on Omicron, I don't know if I ever asked this question, do you still go back and play that? Do you still get Omicron to the table and kind of give it an occasional war spin now and again just to see how it plays?
Yeah, I mean, I play it. I teach it still at our local store every month.
Wow.
It's a miniatures based crossover to board game, so in a way, it's a live game.
Yeah.
I mean, we actually have two more factions,
Right.
like already characters designed and like story created and everything. We just haven't had the time and resources yet to really focus on kind of actually making those rules balanced and everything. But it's designed to be a game that's more like X-Wing or Warhammer, even, where people can just keep playing it.
And then you went from Omicron on to Lunar Rush, which was obviously bringing in kind of Skippy's game.
Yep, Mr. Skippy.
Mr. Skippy. So how did that kind of relationship develop? How did that kind of come about?
Yeah, so that one, again, we blame William.
Yeah.
It's always William.
Is there a day with a Y in it? Blame William.
Yeah. A random story with William, actually.
Well, we always like
when we were
random.
making.
Yeah, we like this, right, kid?
Yeah, so this is like, I think he was on his like 9th video at the time, so he was pretty new. We both knew Jeremiah from Geek HQ, and then we were just making this game. We're like nobodies, and it's like another small miniatures game, and we're like nobody wants to review it. We kind of try to reach out to like Dice Tower and Rado, and they're like, "What the hell is this?" So our friend Jeremiah was like, "Oh, I have a friend who's like starting a review site, and you should go meet him." So we drove like an hour down. Like we met in the middle. He drove an hour too, and then he brought like one of his friends, and we just taught him the game. And the first thing we're like, "Have you played miniatures games before?" And they're like, "No." We're like, "Oh shit."
This isn't gonna go well.
Yeah, I still have the photo of like the two of them just like staring at the board, like it's almost like this puzzled face.
You need to send me that photo because that'll be the cover art for the episode sorted out.
Okay,
I want to see that. I'm gonna put that. I'm gonna put that in the corner. It's just like special random guests, and people are gonna go, "Who the hell is that?" In the
What
photograph.
the hell is that? Yeah. Yeah, and then we were very surprised he actually really enjoyed it, and then just became one of our kind of champions for the game and connected us with as many people as we now know just throughout the years. So that's kind of a side story of how we met William. For Skippy, we had a local convention with a pretty big proto-spiel scene, so a lot of people come here to test games.
Yeah.
So he's like, "Oh, actually, I don't know if he told you this. He started the YouTube channel for Skippy."
Yeah. No.
So, he probably didn't want to admit that, but now it's recorded. So you
we
may
can
choose
edit-
whether
I
you
can-
want
I
to
can-
show that or not.
I can edit that out.
No, I mean he tells people that, I think, but he created it to kind of trust me. He's okay with it.
Trust me.
I think.
Yeah.
Raise your right hand.
Scouts owner.
Yeah.
So he created the Hungry Gamer channel to like help Skippy because Skippy had a lot of good design ideas. And one year, right before the pandemic, he brought Skippy over from Colorado to California to do the proto spiel, and we played one of his first games, not published yet because it's a pretty involved game called Space: The First Floor.
Yeah.
Love that game. It's a satellite system. Like every game he makes has some link to space and aerospace engineering because that's his background.
Yeah.
We played it. We really liked it. So ever since, we just kind of play test for him here and there where I do. And during the pandemic, he just started having more and more ideas through it on TTS, Tabletop Simulator. And one of them was Lunar Rush, back then called Moon Mining. Because Skippy's really good at game design. He's not
rubbish.
as good at titles.
He's rubbish at names. Let's put that out there.
Yeah. So pretty much he showed me the game, and I immediately was like, this game's amazing. And I was looking at like my logs and stuff. Like I play tested like 10 times in 2 months on Tabletop Simulator with him. And I was just like, and this is like very early stages of the game. Like a lot of the mechanics aren't even in there anymore. So from that point on, I just been helping him play test it. And that was like December 2020. And I think 8-9 months later, like it got to a place where it's like, okay, this is pretty solid. And at that point, we finally finished Omicron Protocol, and we're like, what should we do as our next game? And we were saying, well, since we established the company already, a lot of the stuff, like the logistics of it, all the relationship, is repeatable. So we're like, oh, that's why people turn into publishers and publish other people's games. And we knew him, and I loved the game. So it was one of those like, hey, let's see if he wants to be the first game we publish.
When you get games like that, when you get games that you absolutely love, how difficult is it to kind of get the working of the word out there? You know, is the word? How difficult is it to make people aware of it?
Oh boy, quite.
It's difficult, yeah.
I mean,
it's still our biggest bottleneck, I would say, is just trying to get the word out. You know.
Yeah, like Lunar Rush, we've ran Facebook, Instagram ads for a while. We've pretty much had all the biggest channels, YouTube channels, like do previews. We bought Board Game Geek ads. We still, to this day, at conventions, have people come by and go, oh my God, I've never heard of this game. This is a hidden gem. And I was like, how? We spent how much money? Like literally pasting it everywhere, and like no one's heard of it.
So hard.
I don't know what it is. I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts on that then, Brenda? What do you think? What do you think? Is it difficult to get a game out there? Is it even harder than it used to be? Or
I don't know about harder than it used to be. We've had our 3 games now that we've really worked hard to make people aware, right? With Omicron Protocol, we did a lot of demoing and testing. So that was, and those were the days before we had booths or had any kind of, all we had to worry about was making the game and making it great. Now we have a lot more logistics things to deal with, you know, as we have a bunch of products, right? So now it's like, okay, well, we got to ship stuff here, and we got to make more stuff, and we have to, do multiple titles. So for us, I feel like Lunar Rush, we got in front of a lot of people, but probably less so than we did with Omicron Protocol, which was just boots on the ground, demoing every chance we got.
Years of it.
Yeah. Years of it. I don't know. So it's interesting. For us, it's an evolving game. So I don't know. I couldn't pin, I couldn't stick a pin anywhere and say that we have truly understood what's really working and what's not really working. It's still something that we're just trying to understand. And it's shifting, you know, things are just always changing. So
I think it does come down to coverage as well. I think you get games that are trundling along, doing not very much, or they're doing okay. I mean, Earthborn Rangers, I think is the latest one. I think everybody's heard of that now, and I think the reason that they've heard of Earthborn Rangers is because Shut Up and Sit Down did a video on it. It got 27 squizillion views. Squizillion is a number. And all of us,
a new number.
It's like, I don't know. There's a guy called James Acaster who talks about his favorite number being umpteen, because
that's good.
It sounds really big, but it's in the teens. So you know, and I think that's
I like that.
You know, so that's kind of cool. But then all of a sudden it goes from kind of like being really, really quiet to kind of everybody is now wanting Earthborn Rangers, to the point that the company that made Earthborn Rangers have launched another campaign on GameFound. I don't know if that was part of their plan, because I know that sending games to people like Shut Up and Sit Down it's like throwing a dartboard out of your window and hoping to hit a dartboard across the road in your neighbour's house, their dartboard kind of thing, and hoping to get like a double 20 or whatever, or a bullseye on their dartboard. It's like it's kind of rare that they cover games. They do obviously get sent, and they've got exposure to kind of cover games, but they can turn round a Destiny on a game, you know, no pun included. The Dice Tower, people like that, they kind of cover games. I'm not, you know, there's definitely more kind of critical channels that if they give a nod or a thumbs down, even if they give like a thumbs down, they're not 100% sure, because they get so many bums in seats, they'll have a lot of people that'll... I'm pretty sure there's people that are hate buyers of Shut Up and Sit Down and hate buyers of like these other channels that they go, you don't like this game? I'm going to go out and buy this game because you don't like this game just because I am that edgy and stuff like that. But, you know.
Just the the bigness of the signal is enough that even people, even the negative is bigger than we could possibly hit on.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody came out, if you got like on the Shut Up and Sit Down, and as you say, you got they did a video and it got, 400,000 views, but they said, oh, it's okay, it's not brilliant. There is enough of that percentage of that 400,000 views that actually go, no, I really like... I saw the video where they did on, was it Star Wars Rebellion? I don't know if you've played Star Wars Rebellion. You look like two guys that have played Star Wars Rebellion. Tell me you have.
Once.
I never have, actually.
Yeah.
But they weren't sure about it. But then in the comments in the videos, it's like, you're wrong, this game is amazing. I played it with my son and I thought this is it just brings such a story together. It was absolutely kind of fun. It's absolutely kind of fantastic. But getting the word out is really tricky. And I'm not convinced that Facebook ads provide any power anymore, because all I do when I scroll my Facebook feed is I just see ad after ad for different channels that aren't even kind of stuff that I'm kind of looking for. But...
yeah.
I think it depends on the audience. They're in both places. The people who would go and watch some of these, like Shut Up and Sit Down and Dice Tower, are definitely the more hardcore fans.
Yeah.
So maybe it depends on the game too. Like if it's a heavy Euro or something like that, then sure. But for example, for a game like Cyber Pet Quest, or even simpler, like more casual games, a lot of times we definitely have seen creators tell us, hey, they don't perform that well with BGG ads, which BGG is generally leans a little more middle heavy complexity. And then meta works well. So it really is depending on the audience you're trying to find.
Yeah. Yeah, my friend Seppi said to me, says that you should be aware that because of the demographic that I feed as a podcast, in that Facebook will generally only serve if I did adverts on Facebook, it would generally serve my podcast to predominantly male audience. Unless I did something different with the kind of the keywords and the information on the podcast, it's going to mostly share it to a male audience, because that's where it sees the kind of the click-throughs, which is and I'm just wondering if that's also a thing, if Facebook's kind of like, or Metas, they call themselves, losing money is the last thing I think they call themselves. They lost a bit. Yeah, Mark invested in AI. No, don't do that. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a thing about the demographics that you're right, who it hits when you put an advert in. How can you control where it's hit? It's not like, people, you can compare it to newspaper adverts. Yes, I'm basing it on who actually buys the newspaper and who looks at the newspaper, but on Facebook exactly the same. I'm basing it could be an absolute luck thing. It could get to the right person and the next thing you know, it kind of takes off. But there are some games that become like kind of industry kind of darlings, but then your previous games seem to have been kind of like falling into kind of like the scientific realm. So with Cyber Pet Quest, that seems to be, is this almost like your, how they did like several seasons of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and it was all quite serious, and then they did their musical version and they all became quite lighthearted. So is this kind of like your kind of is this you kind of like going, well, let's kind of explore this space? Because this seems to be an awful lot. It still seems to be a little bit dark, but at the same time, it also seems to be an awful lot kind of more light-hearted and bright-coloured, and there's pinks and lavenders and violets and, so where's the genesis of kind of like Cyber Pet Quest kind of come from?
Well, we definitely wanted to broaden our audience a bit. So in both age and just level of complexity. So we were aiming for a simpler game for sure. And at first, at first, Cyberpunk West started out like the original idea, which popped into my head while talking to one of our booth helpers, Adrian. What's up? Thank you. So Adrian and I were talking, and he and I were kind of just looking around the room and observing the space and thinking about how things could be different, you know, or what's working for who. And I don't know. During that conversation, it's like, oh my god, a little game, a little solo game where you get to play as Jane, who is one of our characters from Omicron Protocol, the cat. Yeah. So in our animals faction, so that was the seed of the idea. And of course, it evolved massively from there. But the original working title was Adventures of Jane, and it was meant just to be like her solo adventure. And then we were like, oh, and then we could do like other pets, you know, blah blah blah. She could have friends. So that was there were many versions as it sort of progressed, but that was definitely, it was our attempt, or our inclination anyway, to just get a small game that is less of a like, oh, I don't know, man, I'm gonna take $100 game home from this convention. You know, is it going to be this one or is it going to be something else? We wanted to make something fun and casual that would be more of a like, oh, this looks cool, you know, that's cheap. I'll pick it up, you know.
Yeah, and also the audience difference, like you mentioned the colors and stuff. We definitely noticed this one, like Omicron Protocol definitely attracts more male. It's a miniature skirmish game.
Yeah.
This one's like the complete opposite. It's usually like female, 25 to 45 probably age range, or people with kids. We have so many people who just come over and say, oh, my daughter, my son would love this game.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like, we're like trying to hit the audience that we don't have with Lunar Rush or Omicron Protocol. And so far it definitely seems like oh, cool. We are getting the audience we want to get, the casual gamers, the family gamers, and the people who want something light.
I think family gamers want something a bit more involved. And I think there's a lot of people who have kind of like they'll have the standard games on the shelf that everybody plays. So they'll have their copy of Uno that everybody can shout at each other. They'll have their copy of Monopoly because everybody has a copy of Monopoly. Even if you don't buy a copy of Monopoly, you end up with a copy of Monopoly. I'm pretty sure they kind of breed. But
I need to go buy a copy of Monopoly now.
No, you should actually have one in your cupboard. If you go to the back of the cupboard and lift a couple of boxes aside, there will be a copy of Monopoly that is just kind of like there. It's just, I think they actually grow from mold now. They don't actually grow from cardboard. It's actually kind of mold. But anyway, I think there's a lot of parents out there that are now into the heavier board game scene, and they can't just sit their kids down with, you know, with Omicron Protocol. They can't, Gloomhaven, Dwellings of Eldervale, even things like Viticulture, you know. Even if you play like, I mean, let's be honest, if you've played Mice and Mystics from Jerry Hawthorne, that's still a fairly complicated game to get your teeth under, which is why I think things like Stuffed Fables did quite well, because it's a much easier kind of game to play. So I think there's a lot of parents that are kind of who are board gamers themselves, who really, really enjoy the hobby, who like playing the more complicated kind of games, and are looking at some way to get the kind of the younger kids involved or the more casual players involved, so they can say, okay, you really, really enjoyed this. Let's then, let's see if we can get other games, Core Quest that's out there, which is like your hand-drawn kind of dungeon crawler kind of games like that. So kids can kind of get kind of more involved, and it kind of gets them into the mindset that actually board games aren't just about rolling dice and moving. They are actually can be a bit more complicated. They can provide a little bit more satisfaction. They can provide you to be, a little bit of thought, mechanical thought, planning, can be kind of provided as well. So in that case, I mean, in terms of if we bumped into each other and I said, oh, I've got I've got to go. I've got to go and get the train, so I can't really speak to you. But if you were wanting to tell me very, very quickly about Cyber Pet Quest, what's your kind of, this person's trying to get away from me by pretending they're going for a train pitch?
Well, do you want to miss the train, or do you actually want to catch the train?
Do you know what I want? I think what I want, right, is I want Bernie to give me his pitch on Cyber Pet Quest, and then I want Brendan to give your pitch on Cyber Pet Quest, and then I'm going to score you accordingly. Like,
oh, it's a competition.
Oh my god!
I'm going to bring my phone up. So we're going to start with Bernie. I'm going to put some number. We're going to make this fun. We're going to put 47 seconds on the clock.
Oh wow!
I feel like I'm at a Britain's Got Talent audition.
There's no talent at Britain's Got Talent, so you. And all the talent they've got through, they usually buy in. I mean, there's occasional talent. I mean, there is no real Britain's Got. I mean, unless it's a dog involved doing tricks. But apart from that, right, ready? And 47 seconds start now.
All right, Cyberpipe Quest is a adventure game played as a campaign with cybernetic pets trying to save their owner in a world where humans have gone mad. It is a very casual game that's super easy to pick up. Each session takes about as much time to play as it takes to set up or tear down your Gloomhaven game, and it is a wonderful way to get people who never played a campaign game and always wanted to, or just wanted to play a campaign game that you can finish in a weekend, done all at once. It's in a tiny, small box with lots of content and replayability, and you should definitely check it out.
I mean, he did it, and that's 31 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so that was pretty good. Right, Brendan.
I just talk fast.
Ready? No, I'm not counting you in. Right, after 7. No, after 3. Right, 3, 2, 1, go!
Cyber Pet Quest is a co-op adventure game. It's great for the whole family. It's especially good if you want to get your kids and introduce them into the world of more complex board games and campaign games. You play as a squad of pets. They're all cybernetically enhanced, and you're on a mission to save your owner. Most of the humans in the world have some cybernetics, and they're all sort of hallucinating their favorite activities, but they're acting out in bad ways. So your owner goes missing, and you have to go rescue him and get him out of whatever trouble he's gotten himself into. Cyber Pet Quest.
It was slightly less time, but I think it was a draw. I think it was a draw. I'm obviously gonna deduct you both kind of like 2 marks each because you didn't actually mention what the main mechanics were, whether it was dice rolling or drafting or worker placement. But what kind of game would you say it is? Is it a dice rolling, card drafting, worker placement type game, or all three?
I'd say tactics is probably the main mechanic. Positioning. Mm-hmm. So that's what I mean by tactics. Mm-hmm. We added dice rolling because dice is always fun.
Yes, it is.
But we didn't want it to be so random like other dice games, or even dice games like the Monopoly even. So you always get certain abilities, and the dice just gives you more if you roll well. So that was kind of how we got the dice down to that mechanic. There are lots of cards and item usage, but we mainly call it like a campaign game. It's a story-based campaign game, like a super mini Gloomhaven.
Super mini.
Super mini.
Super.
Umpteenth mini.
Umpteenth.
Yeah, you could fit 20 of our boxes. At least in a Gloomhaven box, I think.
I think you can actually. There has been pictorial evidence of people fitting small children inside a Gloomhaven. Let's face it. I mean, we're at that point now where Isaac is literally. I asked him. I said, "So, do you actually measure your toddler because he's got a kid?" And I said, "Do you measure your toddler in the number of Gloomhaven boxes it compares to?" And he says, "Yeah, we have done that." Yes, we have done that. We have done that in the kind of the past. In terms of the kind of price of admission, how much it costs for a pledge. I'm not going to, because normally I ask people and they're like, Let me just check. So I've got it here in front of me. So I'm going to go through it here. So the standard edition is $24, and that gets you the Cyber Pet Quest standard edition game plus access to the Pledge Manager. You can get the Lucky Cat Pledge Deluxe Edition game, which is about $39, and that gets you the Cyber Pet Quest Deluxe Edition game where you get a free cat. That's made up. That's made up.
Yeah.
Then you get the Happy Dog Pledge, which you get, it's about $79, which is access to the Pledge Manager, the Deluxe Edition, the Cyber Pet Quest Miniature Set, Metallic Aggro Token, Pet Specific Dodge Dice, Metallic Pet Tag Sneak Dice, and Acrylic Round Dial Dice. There you go. And I suppose you've got a really, really big one. You have the Golden Goose Pledge, $169. Oh my goodness. Here's a question. One of the things that's come into popularity an awful lot, and I don't know if this is because of the change in kind of crowdfunding platforms out there, which is, you know, GameFound's come on, Backer Kits come on, is once the campaign's finished, you have the Pledge Manager, but then you leave the kind of campaign kind of open, so that people can then back on the likes of Backer Kit or GameFound, or I think Kickstarter are now, joining us in 2021 by advising they're going to start. I don't.
A little late.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like you're the Internet Explorer of the crowdfunding world.
Yeah.
Which is, everybody knows that. Everybody knows that meme. You know what I mean? What do we want? Faster browsers. When do we want it? And then you've got Internet Explorer going, faster browsers. So it's kind of like catching up. But how important nowadays do you think it is for people to have kind of like the campaign kind of running, the initial buzz running, but then continuing going through like a Backer Kit or a kind of a game pound, because pets, you should have game pound would be the ideal kind of Backer Kit for pets.
That would be good.
But anyway, but how important would you say it is to have like something in place like GameFound after the fact, so that people can still kind of jump in and offer pledges?
It's really important, right?
Yeah,
I would say a quarter or maybe a third of like funding often comes from the late pledges, because it's like a shopping cart, right? You kind of go like, oh, well, earlier maybe I backed with 1 hour to go and I just had to quickly decide on something, and now I could actually have time to sit down and look through what they offer. The other thing that's cool about the late pledges is sometimes we come up, whether it's through the campaign because people voted on it, or we had a new idea of a new add-on, you could just put it there and start kind of pre-selling it for people who want it at a discount.
I think also from the marketing kind of thing, you can kind of spread out your marketing a bit more. You don't have to be the kind of the rush. I think it allows you a bit more negotiation price as well. If somebody says to you, well, if it's in the first month of the campaign, it's going to be X amount because this is the premium and you've got to get people on board. But if you're saying, well, listen, in the next 6 months, let's do something, but we're going to negotiate a kind of a different market hitting rate, then it kind of gives you that kind of bit of power as well, I would reckon. But for someone like me, who speaks to people who kind of are in your situation where you are running kind of crowdfunding campaigns, there's not as much of a need for us to do the conversation as quickly as possible. I am finding I'm speaking to people who they're now through the other side, because one of the things I'm very, very aware of is if you're having a marketing conversation where at the same time, if you're on the campaign, I have done podcasts with people who are quite clearly, they need to be focused having a chat, but they also, in the hour that they're speaking to me, they could be answering 52 different comments because the campaign's kind of doing so well. So there's sometimes a bit of distraction. Whereas if you're in kind of like the back at the GameFound, the after effect, kind of like in kind of managing the Pledge Manager afterwards, it gives the ability for me to ask different questions like, how do you think the campaign went? How do you think it's doing? What else could you do? What would you do to improve it? And they're still in that kind of live kind of situation where it's kind of going quite, I still feel it's kind of going quite well, which is, so it's interesting to see what happens kind of with kind of crowdfunding going forward. One of the things I have seen, and I'd be interested in your thoughts of this, is I've seen generally the price of these games going through the roof, but offering kind of stretch pays, abilities to make payments for 2 or 3 times.
Over time.
Oh.
Where they kind of like, people can sink in like, $300 on a pledge, but then they can then pay it off at $100 a pledge. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Brendan.
I guess, my opinion is we would offer it if it were available or important for people. I'm a kind of person who loves to just, if I can afford it, I'll just put all the cash down and do it. But that said, I've definitely made purchases over my lifetime that have been like, I don't want to pay $1,000 right now. I'll pay $300 a month, whatever. So I think it's something that can allow people to make purchases where they might not otherwise be comfortable, and I think that's okay.
What about you, Bernie? What do you think?
It's definitely something we've actually have faced before. So one of the things we do is we generally reach out to anyone who cancels or something just to kind of get feedback. It's like, hey, is there something we can improve or something? I would say majority or even most of the reason generally is something money related, whether it's end of the month or beginning of the month or holiday season's coming. So I do think that
something comes up.
Something comes up and I need the money. And they either do come back later in the late pledge or maybe when the game's fully out, or sometimes people forget about it. So it's one thing that I think having that offer definitely reduces the money pressure.
Yeah.
Of course, the only concern I have is none of our games are super expensive, but like people hopefully shouldn't be buying something that they can't afford.
Yeah.
But I do like that most of these payment things, at least for the first 6 months, from what I've seen, are all 0%. So it's not as much like a credit card. Here's 20-something% if you don't pay it in a month.
Yeah. I think my only concern is making sure that we're managing it so that people are limited to the number of kind of stretch pays that they can take out. So that, it's all very well somebody saying, well, I can afford $40 for the next 3 months. But it's when it gets to the situation where, yes, but I've committed to 15 of these things now. And it's a question of whether it's... I guess the other thing is it also... it stops the self-regulation of pricing, as in these big, huge sets kind of coming out, which are like $500-$600 a time. It's like that's a bit of a concern where people think that a board game is, so the biggest one I've seen maybe is about $300. But again, it's like, is $300, should that be the normal for a board game? I can't imagine me sitting down with anybody. I don't know, I guess. I mean, if you're looking at, if you're talking about a camera, $300 for a decent camera is nothing. If you're looking at a games console, $300 for a games console is cheap. A Switch. If you're looking at, anything like that, any kind of equipment. But again, it's a guess of, well, if it's becomes $300 every month and a half or every 2 months, is that when it kind of becomes an issue? But no worries. That's something that you can worry about in the future, I guess.
When we have a $300.
And that's why we're keen on, I mean, even though it accounts for like percentage wise a lot less of the, like, our backers don't go for the standard edition for the most part. I mean, a lot of people have for this campaign, which is great. It's why we wanted to do that. But just it's just something we always do. It's just, you should be able to play. If you don't want minis, you should still be able to play this game.
Yeah.
Even our first campaign, which we kind of regretted it, but we made cardboard standees version of our miniatures game just so that we can offer a very cheap
do you know what? I like standees. Because it's, and I'll tell you one reason. The main reason is getting them painted.
Oh yeah. I like to paint.
I do like to paint as well, but then me painting then it's like I've got limited amount of time. So it's either I'm painting or I'm playing or I'm planning or I'm reviewing or I'm podcasting. So if and then it's, you know, something has to drop.
I like to paint. I don't do it anymore
I like.
I don't have time.
I like to paint because I just, you know, I get into this kind of zen state. I'm like Bob Ross. You know, I'm just gonna stick some. I'm just gonna stick some purple on these. On these Marines. Here we go. We're gonna make a mistake, but that's fine. That's fine. We're just gonna keep dry brushing here. That's why this is what this is for. It's not a makeup brush. It's for dry brushing. It's a makeup brush. But anyway, the campaign's not got that much longer to go, has it? It's only 11 days. 11 days at the time of recording. So hopefully, if I get my finger out. You know what that means, Bernie, don't you? If somebody says they're going to get their finger out, you know what that means.
That's my time to talk?
No, it means that they're going to hurry up and get the stuff done. I don't understand. It's like this Americanism kind of thing. It's like, you know, if I get my...
Brits are strange.
Language, it's kind of like English, but it's not what I understand it. And, you know, semantics for another time. But what I'll do is... you know, you got 11 days to go. Hopefully by the time this comes out, we'll still be plenty of time for people to kind of jump on. But if people have listened along today and they've went, well, that was chaotic. Let's get some more of this. Let's get some more of this chaos. You know, I want some chaos. I want some Dead Alive chaos in my veins. Where do they go on the internet webs to find you? Where do you exist? So let's start with Brendan. Where do you exist on the internet webs?
We exist. Our primary point of existence is deadalivegames.com. It's one word, deadalivegames.com. We exist on Facebook. We have groups there. We exist on Instagram, all at Dead Alive Games. X, I think. Not that we're very active on there, I don't think, but TikTok. Bernie does a good job with some goofy videos. Yeah.
And Threads. Don't forget.
Everybody forgets. Everybody forgets Threads. I was gonna like go walk past Threads, and it's like, do you know what I mean? It's like walking past like some kind of sandwich shop that you haven't been to for a while, and you had like a really good BLT from them one day, and you walk past and you go, do you know what? I really should go back in there for lunch. That's Threads. I just kind of like walk past it. I have it like as one of my kind of bookmarked tabs, and it's like, okay, so I'm gonna share this review, share this podcast, share this new bit of kind of media that I've created, and then accidentally always forget about Threads every single time, and I don't know, because it's just like, isn't this just wordy Instagram? And if it's wordy Instagram and it's still meta, isn't that just Facebook? So what am I really kind of missing out on here? I don't know. We will of course put all the links in the show notes, so that we've got notes to show. It's like an announcement. And the next platform will be Delaware. That's Delaware. And if you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, this, I tell you what, this is really good fruit juice. It's kicking in a treat. I'm not sure about the athlete's foot powder though. It's got a bit.
I hope you didn't mix those.
It's a bit of a
external application only.
It's a bit dry. But if you want to keep an eye on where we're up to, then go to the internet web, search for We're Not Wizards, and you'll find us on all the different places, staces, bright and early for the daily races. We're on everywhere except we are on Threads. We just can't be bothered with it. You know what I mean? It's just like, you know, it's like, it's April, it's May actually almost. It's like that kind of thick, heavy jacket. I know it's there in the cupboard. It doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to wear it right now because it's a bit too cumbersome. But you can go and just find us on Spotify, and if you like what you've listened to on Spotify, then drop us a rating or a review. And as we say, if you are going to be giving us a rating or a review on any of these platforms, don't give us 10 stars because it just makes me big-headed. And as you see, got a big head. And don't give us 1 star because it makes us cry. Give us something in the middle, like a 5, because it's average. And we're just a little bit average. But the people who have not been average tonight, give you Brendan, I give you Bernie, I give you Dead Alive Games. There's only a couple more things to do. First thing is to remember there were many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Brendan?
We're not.
Are we wizards?
Training to be
Oh,
one.
wow. 50% chance.
Abracadabra.
50%.
Abracadabra.
50%. I can edit you out so you sound absolutely dreadful through this whole thing. That's the kind of magic. That's the kind of magic I can do, Mr. Lynn. You watch yourself. You know, still got time. Still got time. And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from the rather wonderful, rather fantastic, smartly dressed, eloquent loveliness in his lovely dead alive hat. That's Brendan Kendrick. Say goodbye, Brendan.
Bye, everybody.
And it's a goodbye to the absolute sudden disappointment. The man I would probably cross the street now if I saw him in the street. The man who would sit behind in a cinema and throw popcorn out. It's a person who made me sad in the last minute of the show. Say goodbye, Bernie.
See you later.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll sixes. And remember, if you're going to get yourself on a quest and you're an animal lover and you love your robotics and you love to save human beings, get yourself on the cyber pet quest. Until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.